A storm was brewing inside the Senate chamber, but no one expected it to hit this hard. Senator Patty Murray didn't raise her voice, she didn't have to. Her words did the damage on their own. Across the table sat Attorney General Pam Bondi, the most powerful law enforcement official in the country, and in that moment she looked cornered. What began as a standard oversight hearing quickly transformed into one of the most explosive confrontations on Capitol Hill this year, one that peeled back the polished surface of government to reveal what might be a deep rot underneath. "Can you confirm," Murray asked sharply, "that you won't allow this kind of conduct to continue at the Department of Justice?" The room went silent. Cameras zoomed in. Bondi hesitated, then dodged. "I'm not going to talk about anything that's alleged," she said flatly.
Before I turn to my questions, I do want to raise my alarm about the troubling pattern of trampling basic rights. Detainees, including U.S. citizens, being shipped overseas without any due process. Elected officials are detained for conducting oversight, and a U.S. senator gets tackled to the ground for asking questions at a press conference. This is not the country I know or the values I believe in, and I hope that colleagues on both sides of the aisle will agree with that. Now, to the questions. Yesterday, and I know that Senator Van Hollen raised this issue, a former DOJ attorney filed a protected whistleblower complaint accusing Deputy AG Emil Bove and senior DOJ leadership of defying court orders, including through, quote, lack of candor, deliberate delay, and disinformation, unquote. The complaint also accuses this administration of firing the whistleblower for, quote, telling the truth to the court. These allegations are deeply concerning. Now, I know you said that you can't discuss the case, but can you confirm that you agree that this administration should follow court orders?
We will follow court orders, Senator. The entire administration will follow court orders. The problem arises in the district courts. All these district courts throughout the country are tying our hands. And here's how we will follow them when we get to the United Supreme Court.
I need to ask
we're winning.
A number of questions.
And so, yes, we're following the orders of the court.
Let me ask my questions. Can you confirm you will not allow any conduct like what is alleged to continue at the DOJ?
I'm not going to talk about anything that's alleged. What I will talk about with you, hold on, you asked me a question and I get to answer it. What you asked me, alleged conduct that's part of a pending whistleblower lawsuit that was filed on the eve prior to Emil Bove's hearing today.
I'm not asking about that
suspicious. Hold on, let me keep going. I would run through a wall for Emil Bove and Todd Blanche.
Like to continue with my questions. I have very limited time. Thank you. I just want you to confirm for this you will not allow conduct like that at the DOJ. Yes or no?
I will always support and defend Emil Bove, and I will defend Todd Blanche. They are two of the finest people I know and two of the ethical people I know.
Let me keep going here. Now, in April, DOJ abruptly terminated over 300 public safety grants that had already gone through a very rigorous and fair and apolitical application process with no explanation. This is funding to investigate and prosecute drug trafficking, to support foster care kids who experienced abuse or neglect, to expand access to forensic exams to prosecute violent crimes like sexual assault. These really senseless cancellations have already forced public safety organizations to cut employees and services. So I want to ask you, when you cut off the community-based violence intervention and prevention initiative funding, were you aware it is used to prevent and reduce violent crime?
Yeah, Senator, you weren't here for that, so I'm going to have to repeat myself. We have cut grants. I think we've cut 6%. But if we have cut a grant that you feel should not be cut, please reach out to me. I will personally look at it. We've turned multiple grants back on. Okay. We have an appeal process. But if you want to come to me directly, I would be happy to sit down with you and look at that and help you.
I'm happy. I appreciate that.
Again, we're doing everything we can.
Okay, but let me just ask you, when you cut off the expanding access to sexual assault forensic examination grant, were you aware that that grant helps our authorities prosecute rape and sexual assault?
I have no idea about that specific grant you're talking about. That's why I said if you want to come sit down with me, I would never cut a grant
I appreciate
intentionally
that. It's
that
very
has
hard
anything
for those
to do.
recipients on the other end across the country.
Can you
to
give
get
me
a
the
phone
details of
interview.
that grant?
I can absolutely do that, and my staff will get that to you, but those are two critical ones that I just wanted to ask you about today.
Again, we've turned many grants back on and will continue to. If you want to call me and we can discuss them with you.
Okay, in your budget request, you propose consolidating the Office on Violence Against Women into the Office of Justice Programs. In 2002, Congress actually codified the office as a permanent, separate, and independent office to implement the Violence Against Women Act. We did that to make sure that violent crimes against women receive the necessary attention, expertise, and resources, and to give the office a strong, independent voice within the Justice Department and federal government. Now your department wants to fade that into the OJP, which violates the intent of the law that we passed. It makes grant programs less effective, and it places a lot more barriers for victims and services they need. And I see that you're cutting the office's resources by about a third. So will you commit to us, the Appropriations Committee, to follow the law and maintain OVW as a separate grant entity?
I will follow the law, but I will not keep that as a separate grant entity. You and I can disagree all day long on what the law is.
Well,
that's being consolidated into the Office of Justice Programs.
so if
I'm
you're-
not going to cut, let me answer, I'm not going to cut anything that's going to hurt violence against
Not
women.
my question.
It will
I'm
eliminate
asking, just for your information, Attorney General, in 2002, we codified the office as a permanent, separate, and independent office. So that you need to go back and take a look at that. I know my time is out, but I thank you very much for the time.
But what she refused to talk about was exactly what everyone wanted to hear. A whistleblower had come forward, someone inside the DOJ itself, and what they alleged was nothing short of stunning. According to the whistleblower complaint, senior officials inside the department had deliberately defied court orders, misled judges, and retaliated against a colleague who tried to tell the truth. It even named names: Deputy Attorney General Amal Bove and senior DOJ leader Todd Blanche, both known allies of Bondi. And yet, instead of condemning the behavior or promising to investigate, Bondi's response was shocking. "I would run through a wall for Bove and Todd," she declared. The words echoed through the chamber. To some it sounded like loyalty. To others it sounded like complicity. Murray's expression didn't change. She pressed on, cutting through Bondi's deflections with precision. This wasn't just about one whistleblower, it was about a pattern. A pattern of power being protected instead of questioned, of truth being buried instead of exposed. And she wasn't about to let it slide. Then she shifted gears from corruption to consequences. In April she began, "Your department abruptly terminated over 300 public safety grants that had already been approved. These weren't political, they were life-saving." The list was devastating: grants that funded anti-drug task forces, supported foster care children who had been abused, helped local law enforcement investigate sexual assaults, and provided community-based violence prevention programs. All gone. Bondi didn't deny it. She simply minimized it. "We've cut about 6%, she replied, as if it were just another line in a budget spreadsheet. "If there's a grant you think shouldn't have been cut, reach out to me. I'll look at it personally." The response landed with a thud. Murray leaned forward. "When you cut off funding for sexual assault forensic exams," she asked, "were you aware that it helps authorities prosecute rapists and support victims?" Bondi paused. Then with stunning casualness, she said, "I have no idea about that specific grant." The air went still. This wasn't a question about policy, it was about the lives behind those policies. And in that instant, Bondi's detachment told the story more clearly than any document ever could. She promised to look into it, but for Murray that wasn't enough. Because behind those grant numbers were shelters that would now go dark, clinics that would close, victims who would lose their chance at justice. The senator's frustration was visible, but she didn't raise her voice, she just kept going. And what came next was the knockout blow. Murray turned to Bondi's budget proposal, flipping to a section buried deep in the fine print. "You're proposing to fold the Office on Violence Against Women into the Office of Justice Programs," she said. "That violates the law. In 2002, Congress had passed a bill, bipartisan, deliberate, and clear, that made the Office on Violence Against Women a permanent independent entity within the Department of Justice. It was designed that way to ensure crimes against women were never treated as an afterthought, but with dedicated focus, funding, and oversight. Bondi's proposal would undo all of that, merging it into a bureaucratic maze that would weaken its reach and silence its voice. When confronted, Bondi didn't back down. "I will follow the law," she said, "but I will not keep that as a separate entity. You and I can disagree all day long on what the law is." That one line said everything. A sitting attorney general, dismissing congressional law as a matter of opinion. Murray's reply was firm and factual. "In 2002, we codified that office as permanent and independent. You need to go back and look at that." But by then it was clear, Bondi wasn't interested in looking back. She was rewriting the rules in real time. The hearing room murmured. Staffers glanced at one another. Viewers watching live felt the weight of what they were seeing, not just political theater, but the unraveling of institutional accountability. Each answer from Bondi seemed to reveal more than she intended. A whistleblower silenced, grants for victims cut, legal obligations reinterpreted, and through it all, a steady insistence that everything was under control. But Murray wasn't just fighting for answers, she was fighting for the principle that no one, not even the Attorney General, stands above the law. She reminded the committee that justice isn't a slogan, it's a promise. One that means nothing if the people enforcing it start picking favorites. "This isn't about politics," she said quietly. "It's about the safety and rights of every American who counts on this department to protect them." As the exchange continued, Bondi repeated her talking points. "We're doing everything we can. I'd be happy to sit down with you. We've turned some grants back on." But the words felt hollow. Each sentence was a polished deflection, and each time, Murray brought it back to reality. Because what was at stake wasn't abstract, it was deeply human. Every cut program represented a broken promise. Every ignored whistleblower represented a silenced truth. Every bureaucratic maneuver risked burying justice under paperwork and politics. And when the conversation turned back to the whistleblower, Bondi's loyalty became even more clear. She refused to commit to protecting them, even as Murray reminded her that retaliation against a protected witness is a federal offense. Instead, Bondi's only response was personal. "I will defend Amal Bove and Todd Blanche. They are the finest people I know." For Murray and for anyone watching, that was the moment everything crystallized. This wasn't about one case, it was about culture. A department where power shields itself, where questioning authority becomes a risk, and where accountability is replaced by allegiance. By the time the hearing wrapped, Murray had drawn a line in the sand. She summarized what the country had just witnessed: a Justice Department defending insiders, gutting critical programs, and shrugging off laws meant to protect the vulnerable. Her closing words were measured but heavy. "If we allow this kind of conduct to go unchecked, we're not just abandoning oversight, we're abandoning justice itself." That sentence lingered long after the gavel fell. Because beneath the formality of hearings and soundbites, something bigger was at stake: trust. The kind of trust that allows citizens to believe their government still serves them, not itself. And that's why this exchange matters. It's not about political theater or partisanship. It's about what happens when one of the most powerful departments in America starts answering to people instead of principles. The scene that day was more than a confrontation, it was a snapshot of a government in conflict with its conscience. On one side, a senator demanding accountability for victims, whistleblowers, and the rule of law. On the other, an attorney general defending her allies and cutting off the very programs that keep people safe. It's the kind of tension that doesn't end with a hearing. It builds quietly, dangerously, until the public decides it's had enough. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just one senator confronting one attorney general, but the larger question their exchange exposed: what happens when those entrusted to uphold justice begin to redefine it for their own ends? Senator Murray's warning wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. A government that loses sight of justice soon loses the trust of its people. And when that trust collapses, no law, no title, and no office can restore it overnight. Pam Bondi may have walked out of that hearing composed, but the questions she left unanswered are far from settled. The whistleblower's claims still stand, the cut programs are still gone, and the victims, the people at the center of all this, are still waiting for someone in power to care. What began as a hearing ended as a revelation, and for millions watching, it wasn't just about policy, it was about principle. Because when the Department of Justice starts choosing sides, it stops being justice at all. So now the question is yours: was this just another political clash, or the first real sign that something far deeper is breaking inside America's justice system? Tell us what you think in the comments. We read every one. And if you want to stay ahead of the stories they'd rather you didn't see, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because what happens behind those doors in Washington doesn't just stay there, it shapes everything that happens next.